Dear students, today we will study Unit 2, Current Electricity, Chapter 3, and in this unit we will study about the electric current in conductors, Ohm's law, drift of electrons and origin of resistivity, limitations of Ohm's law, resistivity of various materials, and temperature dependence of resistivity. So, we start with the electric current. Before understanding the electric current, we must know the charge carriers. We know electron is a charge carrier, proton is a charge carrier, alpha particles is a charge carrier, and ions, they are also the charge carriers. So, charge particles which constitute electric current in solid, liquids, or gases are known as current or charge carriers. In solids, the charge carriers are electrons, as we see in the case of conductors. In semiconductors, free electrons and holes are the charge carriers. Free electrons, as we have in the case of conductors, and holes are the electron deficient sites. And in liquids, electrolytes conduct, and positive and negative ions of the electrolytes are responsible for the flow of the current through it. In gases, we say that we know that generally the gases, they do not conduct, but at low pressure and high potential difference they conduct because they get ionized. Here positive ions and electrons are the charge carriers. Now, electric current. In the previous chapters and the unit electrostatics, we have studied about the charges are at rest, and we have not seen the word current because static charges do not constitute the current. Then what constitutes the current? Flow of electrons, flow of protons, flow of charges, in general we can say, constitutes the current. Motion or flow of electrons constitutes current, or we can say motion of charges constitutes current. Lightning is one such phenomena in which charges flow from clouds to the earth through the atmosphere. Many electrical equipments and devices which we use in our daily life works on the flow of the electric current through them, like electric fan, torch, electric iron, electric geyser, electronic watch, mobile phones, computers, and so on. There are number of equipments, devices which works on the flow of the current. Now, electric current. How do we define electric current? Electric current is defined as the amount of electric charges flowing through any cross section of the conductor per unit time. Or electric current is defined as the rate of flow of charge through a cross section of a conductor, cross section being perpendicular to the flow of the charge. And we can write mathematically the current I is equal to Q by T, but all the time the current is not steady. Thus, the instantaneous current is defined as I T limit delta T tends to 0 delta Q by delta T. That is the differentiation of the charge with respect to time. Now, what is the direction of the current? The direction of the conventional current is taken along the direction of flow of positive charge. As we know that in conductors, electrons they move, and electrons have assigned the negative charge, so the direction of the conventional current in a conductor is opposite to the direction of the flow of the electrons. SI unit of current is ampere, and we can define with the relation I is equal to Q by T, then 1 ampere is equal to 1 coulomb by 1 second. That means if 1 coulomb of charge is passing through any section of the conductor in 1 second, then 1 ampere of current is flowing through it. The other units are microampere, milliampere, which we come across in our daily life. Electric current in a conductor, and we are considering here the solid conductor. Suppose a conductor, a solid conductor, and no electric field is applied across its ends. We know that in a solid conductor, a large number of free electrons exist, but due to thermal motion, they are in motion and collide with fixed ions. After collision, their direction becomes random. There is no preferential or particular direction of motion of electrons inside the conductor when there is no electric field is applied. They move randomly, so there is no net displacement of the electrons, and hence there is no net flow of charge, and hence no net electric current through the conductor. And we observe it in our daily life that a wire lying on the floor which is not connected to any source of EMF do not possess any current. What happens when electric field is applied across the conductor? Consider a conductor and an electric field is applied. A source of EMF is connected across the ends of the conductor. When electric field is applied across the ends of the conductor, free electrons inside the conductor start moving towards positive end, because all free electrons experiences a force due to electric field. We have studied in previous chapters that an electric field exerts a force on the charge in the electric field region. So a steady electric field across the conductor maintains the steady current through the conductor. All electrons, they experience a force in the same direction, and they start moving in one particular direction, and hence they constitute the current. Ohm's law. This is a very basic and important law in electrical circuits and is discovered by G.S. Ohm in 1928. This is the basic law regarding flow of currents. Consider a conductor through which a current I is flowing, and let V be the potential difference between the ends of the conductor. Then Ohm's law states that V is directly proportional to I, or V is equal to Ri, where R is a constant of proportionality known as the resistance of the conductor. The SI unit of resistance R is ohm and is denoted by omega. Now we can state the Ohm's law. The current I flowing through a conductor is directly proportional to the potential difference V across the ends of the conductor, keeping the physical conditions like temperature, pressure, mechanical strain, etc. constant. Now this is important, that we have to keep the physical conditions constant. Otherwise, Ohm's law may not be valid. Factors. What are the factors on which the resistance of a conductor depends? The resistance of a conductor depends on the nature of the material of the conductor. For this, if we consider the example of iron and copper, both are conductors. Iron conducts electricity and copper conducts electricity. And if we take the same dimensions of the two conductors, one of copper, another of iron, then iron will have greater resistance. This is due to its nature. Similarly, there are many other conductors having greater or less conductivity with respect to others. So, in our daily life, we use the conductors which have high conductivity and less resistance. This is because when resistance is there in a conductor, there is a loss of the energy for the during the transmission of the electrical energy. Now, resistance also depends on the length of the conductor. Resistance of a conductor is directly proportional to its length. R is directly proportional to L. This we can understand that when electrons have to move longer distance to reach to the other end of the conductor, then it will collide more number of times, lose its more energy, and it will have less drift velocity. The electrons will move with less drift velocity and hence they have greater resistance. Another factor on which the resistance depends, that is the area of cross section of the conductor. Resistance of a conductor is inversely proportional to its cross sectional area. So we can write R is inversely proportional to cross section area. Combining these second and third, we can write R is proportional to L by A. Again we put a constant of proportionality. Here it is rho, known as the resistivity or the specific resistance of the material of the conductor. For area, we can say that the electrons, when they move with greater cross-section area, have less chances of collision, and hence the resistance of the conductor is less. As R is equal to rho L by A, if we take L as 1 unit and A as 1 square unit, then resistivity or the specific resistance is equal to the resistance of the conductor. Thus, we can define the resistivity of the material of a conductor is the resistance of the conductor of that material having unit length and square unit cross sectional area. SI unit of resistivity is ohm meter. On changing length and cross section area of a conductor, its resistance changes, whereas its resistivity do not change. That means if a conductor is taken and its temperature is changed, then its resistivity may change, its resistance may change. But if a wire at the same temperature, if it is stressed, then there is no change in its resistivity, but due to the change in the length, its resistance will change. There is a question for you. A wire of resistance R is stressed to twice its length without changing its density. What will be its new resistance and new resistivity? Now, for new resistance, you have to consider, I am only giving you the tip to answer this, that for new resistance, you have to consider the new length, and if it is stressed without changing its density, you have to think about the change in its cross-sectional area also. So on these two factors, you have to tell the change in the resistance or the new resistance and new resistivity. Then you have to consider, you have to think that on what factor the resistivity depends. Does it depends on length? Does it depends on cross-sectional area? Or any other factor? Because here in this question we are not changing any other thing other than length and cross-section area. Experimental verification of Ohm's law. We can experimentally verify the Ohm's law in the labs, or if we have a simple circuit consists of an ammeter, a rheostat, a key, a source of EMF, cell or battery, a resistance, a voltmeter. Ammeter measures the current and voltmeter measures the potential difference. Rheostat is used to vary the resistance. It is a variable resistance. Key to switch on or off the circuit, and source of EMF to provide the potential difference. Now, as ammeter measures the current, so it is always connected in series in the circuit, and voltmeter measures the voltage or the potential difference, so it is always connected in parallel to the conductor or the resistor. So if we start from the positive end of the source of the EMF, the cell or the battery, then we go through the key. The other end of the key is connected to one end of the rheostat, the variable resistance. The other end of the rheostat is connected to the positive. As this end of the source of the EMF is positive, so this end of the ammeter will be positive, and the other end it is connected to the resistance and the voltmeter, and the other end of the resistance and the voltmeter is connected to the negative terminal of the source of the EMF. So by varying the voltage across the conductor, we can note the corresponding reading of the ammeter or the current. Here I have taken these readings are not from the actual experiment, but I have written at my own. So for 0 voltmeter reading, that means if no voltage is applied, then no current flows. So for 0 voltmeter reading, ammeter reading is 0. So for 10 volts, say the ammeter reading is 2. For 20 volts, ammeter reading is 4. For voltmeter reading 30, say ammeter reading is 6 amperes, and for 40 voltmeter reading, say 8 ampere reading. So we can calculate the resistance and it will be the same. Now we have to keep in our mind that while taking the readings, we should not flow the current for longer time, because it may change the temperature of the conductor and variation in the resistance of the conductor may occur. Now VI graph, as V is directly proportional to I, so it's very simple mathematics that if V is directly proportional to I, both are first power, then it will be a straight line. And the slope of the VI graph gives the resistance of the conductor. Say in this graph, VI graph, I have taken 2 points P and Q, and in the right triangle PM, Q, PM is the very change in the voltage and QM is the change in the current. So PM by QM, that is the tan theta. If theta is the angle, then 30 minus 10, 6 minus 2, Pm is 30 minus 10 volts, and Qm is equal to 6 minus 2 amperes current. So 20 by 4, that is equal to 5 ampere. The resistance R is equal to 5 amperes. So we can verify this with the help of ammeter, voltmeter, rheostat, key, and the source of the EMF in the lab very easily. Now, limitations of Ohm's law. Ohm's law has been found fairly good or holds good over a large class of materials, even though there are materials and devices in electrical circuits where proportionality of V and I does not hold. The deviations broadly are one or more of the following types. So here we have taken the three cases. As V ceases to be proportional to I, and practically we can find that due to the change in the temperature of the conductor, there is a variation in the resistance of the conductor, and hence the graph is not a straight line. So the resistance, with the rise in the temperature, the resistance decreases. So when V ceases to proportional, this is maybe the one of the case, and this happens if there is a change. This is one example that when temperature of the conductor varies, then this happens, and this is one of the limitation of the Ohm's law, or Ohm's law fails here. Second, the relation between V and I depends on the sign of V. Now, this we have to understand that sign of V means if we are applying the potential difference in one direction of the device or the conductor, and if we reverse its direction, reverse the polarities of the source of the EMF, the voltage, the sign of the voltage will change, and in the two cases, the flow of the current, the rate of the flow of the current is not same. The current flowing through the conductor or the device is not same, and as in the case of the PN junction diode, in the forward biasing means when positive of terminal of the source of the EMF is connected to the P-type region of the PN junction diode, it conducts and we get current, large current, with respect to the current in the reverse biasing, when the direction of the source of the EMF or the polarity of the applied potential difference is changed, then we do not get the same current. So this is one of the case. The relation between V and I depends on the sign of V, and the Ohm's law do not obey. Third one, the relation between V and I is not unique. That is, there is more than one value of V for the same current I, as in the case of gallium arsenide. We use the gallium arsenide for making the LEDs. So the graph is not linear. Here it is not linear, as well as there is a negative resistance region. So these are the limitations of the Ohm's law. Now, when electric field is applied across the ends of the conductor, the electrons, they get drift in one particular direction and constitute the current. So what is drift velocity? When electric field is applied across the ends of the conductor, all the electrons experiences a force opposite to the direction of the electric field. But during their motion, during their drifting, they collide with the static ions and the other electrons also. But due to the force which is acting continuously, they again accelerate and move in the same direction. All the time they do not move with the same velocity, they do not collide after a regular interval of time. The time of collision is different. So we take the average velocity, that means average of all the velocity of all the electrons moving or drifting in one particular direction as the drift velocity. The average velocity with which free electrons in a conductor get drifted in a direction on applying an electric field across the ends of the conductor is called drift velocity of the electrons. And next is about the average relaxation time. It is denoted by tau. The average time between two successive collisions of an electron when drifting in one particular direction on applying external electric field across the ends of the conductor is called average relaxation. Why we have to take the average time? Because the time of collision is not fixed. It is not fixed that an electron after so and so time it will collide with another ion or electron. Sometimes it collides early and sometimes it moves longer time without collision. So we take the average time of all the electrons having, or we take the average time between two successive collisions of an electron when it is drifting in one particular direction as the average relaxation time. Now the relation between drift velocity and average relaxation time. We know that if electric field is applied across the ends of the conductor, each electron will experience an electrostatic force which is given as F is equal to E into capital E, because electrostatic force is F is equal to QE. If E is the electric field, then if it is multiplied by the charge, then it gives the force. This is the force experienced, the electric force experienced by a charged particle in the electric field. So each electron inside the conductor experiences this force. Now F, according to Newton's second law of motion, F is equal to ma, mass into acceleration. So A is equal to acceleration of the electron inside the conductor when it is drifting is given as EE by m. Using first equation of motion, V is equal to U plus AT. So for V, we can write Vd, and for U, it is taken as 0, and A, EE by m, and tau, T as tau, V is equal to U plus AT. We can write Vd is equal to EE by m into tau. That means E tau by m. So clearly the drift velocity is directly proportional to the average relaxation time. Mobility. Mobility of a charge carrier defined as the magnitude of drift velocity per unit electric field. Mobility of a charge carrier defined as the magnitude of its drift velocity per unit electric field. So mu, it is denoted by mu, is equal to Vd by E. The SI unit of mobility is meter square per volt per second, as drift velocity Vd is equal to EE tau by m. We can write mu is equal to Vd by E. Vd by E, that means EE tau by me. So mu is equal to E tau by m. That means mobility is also directly proportional to tau, and mobility is also inversely proportional to the mass. Now from this relation we can understand the mobility of electrons in conductors is greater than the mobility of ions in electrolytes. Now again there is a question, why conductivity of electrolytes is less than the conductivity of conductors? So the answer lies here. One factor, the mass, and you can write the answer. The second, if we consider the concentration of the electrons in the conductor and the concentration of ions in the electrolytes, then we can understand why the conductivity of electrolyte is less than the conductivity of conductors. Now, relation between drift velocity and electric field. Consider a conductor of length L and cross section area A, and a potential difference V is applied across its ends. Let N be the number of free electrons per unit volume inside the conductor, E is the charge on an electron. If electric field is applied in this direction, the electrons will move in this direction. They will drift in a direction opposite to the direction of the electric field. Consider a planar area. If we consider a planar area, the plane of the area is parallel to the electric field, or normal to the area is parallel to the electric field. So in a very small interval of time, we say that infinitesimal time delta t, all electrons to the left of the area at distances up to Vd into delta t. We are considering a small interval of time delta t. So up to a distance Vd into delta t, left of the cross-sectional area which we have considered, they would have crossed the area. If n is the number of free electrons per unit volume in the conductor, then n delta t Vd into A, such electrons will cross area A. All the electrons which are on the left side of this cross-section area A will cross this area which are lying